All right, another solo episode. Today's topic, I'm talking through three of my favorite mistakes. If that seems like strange terminology, hopefully it won't by the time that we get to the end of this. Mistakes are important. Mistakes are good. Mistakes are not a bad thing. They are opportunities. Every mistake that we make is not an obstacle, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to learn and to grow. And in fact, the what I believe, and this is supported just by what successful people tend to say, is that one of the marks of successful people is that they don't forget their mistakes. They remember their mistakes. Unsuccessful people or the normies, they forget their mistakes, so they make them over and over again. It's totally okay to make mistakes. You should remember them. When you remember them, you learn from them. You grow from them. And when you go to make that mistake again, you get the ubiquitous reminder that this is not what you should be doing. Think of a tribe sitting around a fire, and they're unfamiliar with fire, and one guy sticks his hand in the fire and he gets burned. If he forgets that mistake, he'll get burned again, or he'll watch other people do the same thing. If he remembers that mistake, he's not going to stick his hand in the fire again. And then the little kid who comes and sits beside him, who then reaches for the fire, he's going to grab the wrist of that kid and stop him so the kid doesn't have to make the same mistake. So I'm hoping that if you can't learn from some of the mistakes that I'm about to talk through, you'll at least be provided with a framework to take away so that you can look at the mistakes that you've made, either as a lifter or a coach or a human being or a business owner, whatever frame you want to put on it, but to essentially walk away and look at mistakes as something positive, as something that should be encouraged to be spoken about, to be thought about. I've been thinking for a while, I like this positive spin on the idea of mistakes and the terminology, like my favorite mistake. I've been meaning to make like a series of posts on Instagram, maybe just once a week, of like my favorite mistake this week, and just talk about it. If you think that's a good idea, let me know, because I'm always stumped as to what I should post on Instagram, mostly because I don't care about it that much, but I'm always keen, and I want to curate it to the people that care about what I'm actually saying. I think it is important for me to mention here, as much as I hate mentioning it here, something to do with my neurodivergence. So I'm twice diagnosed, on the spectrum, high functioning, autistic, whatever you want to call it. I got the spicy brain in that regard, and I'm medicated for ADHD. I've been running medication for that for a long while now. The reason why I think it's important for me to mention this, I get asked all the time. Basically every Q&A I do, someone asks me to talk about it. People have heard me say it. I obviously don't talk about it very much because it's not my place necessarily to share that information. But people are curious, and obviously there's more light more light shined on these things these days, and people want to know my experience, and it's on the cards. I'll do an episode one day sharing my experience and lessons from that. It's not going to be today, but I do bring it up to say that some of my mistakes are linked very strongly to my neurodivergent tendencies, and that, I don't want to diminish anyone else's experience, because I think people's experiences of neurodivergent tendencies, whatever they may be, vary so widely. Like autism is a spectrum. Even with ADHD, how you experience your life, what your upbringing it is, certain events that have happened, all of these things are going to shape you into who you are. The same could be said if you're not neurodivergent. But yes, I bring it up mostly to say that certain learning curves for me were probably a little bit steeper than others in some regards, and others were much easier than the average person in other regards. So just for full transparency, I thought I'd slide that in there. Anyway, I don't want to harp on about that too much. My first mistake is just communication in general. So the thing that popped into my head first with this is actually two instances of me making people cry in the gym inadvertently. unintentionally. Especially back in the day, I was less careful with the language that I used. I'm a very sarcastic person, and I tend to, what's the word for it? Overemphasize or stretch or whatever. Like instead of saying, "Oh, the shop's like a 5-minute drive," it's like, "Oh, the shop's like a million years away." That kind of language, and so something like someone doing a sumo deadlift and me saying like, "Oh, don't do that again. That's the worst sumo deadlift I've ever seen in my life." Obviously, that's not true, but that's the kind of language I chose to use before I was made aware that my language is impactful on others as a young adult. And so I think of one particular instance where one of the first members of my gym, his fiance at the time, wife now, was squatting. And I walked past her while she was doing a squat, and she put the set back, and it was a bad squat. It was just a bit ugly. She'd just lost control. And I made a comment like that. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it essentially resulted in her bawling her eyes out and leaving the gym that evening feeling very sad and very crushed. Of course, I apologized profusely and smoothed that over. But I was like, oh, whoa, I speak to my people around me like this, including this person, all the time. What was it that what chord did I strike to create that response? And it was just obviously, she had a buildup of emotion during the day. There was other stuff going on in her life, and my comment was the tipping point. But for me, it was a lesson in, okay, communication, conversation was absolutely my weakest point. I would say that it is now a strength of mine because I've had to sharpen that sword so much over the last 12 years. I'm naturally not a very good communicator. It has been a skill that I've had to develop. I've put significant time and energy and effort into the way that I communicate, into the language I use, into the way, not just from a English grammatical vocabulary standpoint, I mean like how I talk to people and my ability to relate to people and have a conversation. That was non-existent when I opened the gym. So to give you some context, right? When I was in university, 21 years old, 22 years old, whatever I was when I was finishing university, I was also into speed cubing, the sport of speed cubing. So doing Rubik's Cubes really fast. And so I used to carry my cube around with me. I'd bust it out before lectures. I'd sit in the waiting area where everyone was waiting to go into a lecture, and I'd just be playing with my Rubik's Cube because it was a people repellent. It stopped anyone coming near me. I sat up the very front row of every lecture. There would be like a gap of 10 rows before the next human being in that class because I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to be around people. It's not my strong suit. I opened a gym and I'm like, okay, now my job is literally talking to people and being around people. I have to learn this. And I made a lot of mistakes, like the example that I just did. I'm not going to name her, but a very strong Kiwi lifter that used to come to the Gold Coast on holidays. I did the same thing with her. I'm pretty sure I either did a technique session with her or she was training at the gym on holiday, and I made a comment like that, and it made her cry. And same thing, she was obviously having a hard time, and my language was just a terrible choice of words. And I think about that all the time because she's a prominent Kiwi lifter that comes up on my feed or recently messaged about training at ZeroW Christchurch. And I always think all the time, I just want to open every conversation with, hey, I'm sorry for what I said in like 2015. If you're listening to this, I've learned, I've changed, I've grown. But yeah, communication is my, it was historically not a strong point for me. So it's been a long journey of instances like that, of having to learn active listening, communication skills. Empathy is not a really, like, anyone who has met me in the last 5 years will be like, this is not true. Thomas doesn't know what he's talking about himself. If you met me more than 5 years ago, I was literally a different person. I couldn't sit down and have a conversation. I couldn't have a conversation like this to a camera if I was to sit here and try and talk about myself. This has been, again, something I've poured a lot of time and energy and money and therapy into, learning about myself and sharpening that sword. And just like, again, I mentioned the neurodivergence at the start. one way that I frame my own neurodivergence, and this isn't as easy to do as I make it sound for people who experience neurodivergence, is I don't look at it as some sort of crutch or weakness or anything like that. What I look at it as, okay, here's a great opportunity I have in my life where I've had this specific thing exposed to me that I can now research and understand and see in both real time and retrospectively in my life how it's played out. Therefore, I can craft a contingency plan. I can craft an action plan as to how I can work with what I've got to be better for the future. And I'm grateful for that every day because it has been a very challenging process. When everyone's good at something and you suck at that thing, it's quite frustrating. And so learning to frame things in a positive, workable manner has been invaluable for me in my learning and my growing. I've had a lot of life experiences, both as a child, but especially in the last 10 years, that have either created a deficit towards my communication or now prompted me in the right direction to strengthen my communication. And so including, a breakdown of a marriage and that leading to getting therapy and learning a lot more about myself and understanding how I interface with the world has really helped me in my communication skills, which has helped tremendously with my business. Like I couldn't have a successful gym. I couldn't have a successful coaching business without communication skills. The whole thing is built on a foundation of communication. I couldn't have business partnerships in multiple gyms without learning to communicate. So communication has been probably one of my life's greatest lessons, not just business, but life as well. I think from a business perspective, all sales is literally just conversation. It's literally just communication. The goal of a sale is not for me to convince you to give me your money. The goal of a sale is for me to guide you through your own thought process to see value in what I'm offering based on where you are and where you want to be. It is pure communication. If you don't have extreme active listening skills and active recall skills within those conversations, you can't sell. It's so difficult to sell. So I've had to learn to do that. Inevitably in a coaching business, in a gym business, clients leave. The impact that negative word of mouth can have on your business is arguably significantly greater than positive word of mouth. And so understanding how to navigate interpersonal issues, navigate those sort of negatively geared circumstances where maybe you've fucked up, they've fucked up, whoever has fucked up, that creates some sort of conflict. If you can't navigate that with grace and end things on a positive note, it can be it can have a cascade effect over time. And so learning how to deal with those high conflict, high stress situations has been invaluable for me as well. The final point I had around communication was just online presence too. The online version of you is not the real version of you. It's the version of you that you would like to present to the world. And you want to make that as close to the real version of you as possible, right? The beauty of online is that you can sort of highlight all the positive, hide away some of the negative. It's a curated version of yourself. It's ideally the best version of yourself. And you can shatter that reputation by how you communicate and what you choose to say, what you choose to present of yourself. And again, I encourage people to be as personable, relatable, as close to yourself as possible online. But one lesson I've learned through communication online, and this has been primarily from observing, is that if you approach what you do online with a degree of tact and think of yourself external to who you are presenting, especially if you have a coaching business, right? So when I say something on my Instagram, no matter what people think of the idea of ZeroW being a brand separate to an individual, it impacts the brand. So if I get on there and I'm loud and I'm controversial, people don't see that as just me saying that. They see that as ZeroW saying that. And that is extremely powerful and can have extreme consequences. So I've known from a very early time, based on watching others and how poorly they conducted themselves online and not realize how impactful that is. And I mean, you can do this yourself. I mean, just think of the people that you keep going back and looking at because you want to watch that sort of train wreck happening, and not because you're going to buy their services or you see value in their content, but you just want to keep an eye on it because that's all you'll ever know them as, the person who said this controversial thing or did that controversial thing. You get to curate who you are, and that's been a very, very good lesson for me in terms of communication. All right, that's my first mistake. How I've communicated has cost me a lot, but also provided probably the most learning experience in my own career and also in my personal life. My second mistake, over the course of being a coach and having gyms, especially in the early days, I invested far too much time and energy into what other people thought. I would care way too much about what my haters would say about me. And yes, I've had haters over the year. I've probably got a bunch of haters now that I don't know about because I don't pay too much attention or people don't tell me. I've got a lot of good things happening, and that's what I tend to focus on. But back in the day where I had very vocal haters, it's really hard when someone hates on you to not be sucked into it. And it's so crazy. Like if you step back as an observer and look at it logically, so you're watching yourself read these things, get upset, hear these things, get upset. And you look at it logically and you're like, okay, I've got all these people around me that love me and that tell me all these nice things about me. I've got my own internal dialogue and my own like stack of evidence of who I am as a person, what my level of integrity is, who I am, exactly that. You've got all this evidence, you've got all these people, and then one person who you do not give a fuck about, you don't care about what they think and who they are, says one thing about you, and it just seems to crush all of that. Like when you look at it logically like that, you're like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Because if you apply it to another situation, maybe they're not hating on you, they're just saying opinion, right? So you love canned beetroot, and they post, I hate canned beetroot. You don't care. You're just like, oh, whatever, you're wrong. But when they say it about you, when they say you're a piece of shit or you're no good at what you do or whatever, all of a sudden the walls come crashing down. And so it's easy then to look for evidence that they're hating on you. Like how many times have I seen or been presented with like, oh, this person made this post about me. And I read the post not knowing either party very well. And I'm like, this just sounds like it could be about anyone or nobody. It doesn't sound like it's about you at all. Yeah, but it's definitely about me. But if I'm reading it and I can't tell it's about you, then no one else reading it can tell it's about you besides the select group of people who you're either telling this to or, you know, the small circle of people who are involved in this drama. Like it's so easy to get tied down by that. And if I've learned anything about haters in my time, it's that they waste so much time and energy. Like they are literally doing the same thing. They're spending all of their time looking for the shit that you're doing instead of investing in themselves and their growth. They're literally holding back their own life by being a hater. Let them do that. Let them fuck up their own shit. Who cares what they think and what they say? Like it doesn't matter. They're nobodies. They're losers. That's what haters are. They're legitimately just losers. And as you sort of, this is the hard thing, right? And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. This is just like the reality of my progression through, you know, gym owner, coach, and sort of breaking ahead of the crowd and going a little bit bigger than my circle of peers from 10 years ago, for example. Imagine like a running race. And as you sort of start to break away from that race, everyone's going to want to reach out and grab you and pull you back. And the more you turn your head back and look at them, the more you'll just fall back into the pack. So it's so easy to just get dragged behind and dragged back. So when you're ahead of people, they're going to make the most noise about how much they hate you. And it's like, you're ahead. Don't look back. Look forward to the kind of person that you want to be. Get influenced by the people you want to be, or you want to be around, or you want to aspire to, and focus on that. Just keep moving forward. Don't let the naysayers, the negative people, the haters, don't let them drag you back. I know this sounds so cliche, but a lot of people find it really hard to do, like really hard to let go of gossip and drama. You just have to push forward. You've got the evidence in front of you that you are successful. Just focus on that. Focus on being better. I spent a lot of time, I had haters, sure, but I also spent a lot of time looking at people who were more successful than me that I thought, I know more than you. I'm a better coach than you. I'm doing a better job than you. I don't like you because you're saying this stuff and you've got all these followers and all these people worshiping you and paying you lots of money and buying your programs, and I'm not doing as well as you, even though I'm a better coach. Guess what? If they're doing better than you, then they're better than you at something. So like, just spending all your time and energy and effort criticizing and getting angry that you don't have as many followers or as much money or as much success as them, just accept that they are better at you, better than you at something. Focus on that something. Like, what are they better than you at? How can you learn from them? How can you look at them and be like, okay, maybe they don't have, let's say this person is way bigger than you on social media. Maybe they don't have the best knowledge and the best information, but obviously their content, their audience relatability, all of that is way better than you because they've got way more followers. What are you actively working on to take the good things about you, but also reach a wider audience? And if you don't know, look at them and be like, what are they doing right? What's working about what they're doing? And stop focusing on all the negative shit and all the shit that you can't control, because investing your time and energy into them and how much you hate them is literally just time that it could be better spent investing into your own personal growth and development and business growth and development. Stop wasting it on useless stuff. So that was a lesson I had to learn. I would do that. I invested too much time caring about what other people thought about me. I invested too much time into looking at people, call it jealousy. I guess that's the actual definition of it. Looking at people and being like, I deserve that kind of following. I deserve that kind of recognition. I'm a better coach. If I was a better coach, then I would, if I was truly better than them across the board, then I wouldn't be complaining about them. Like, think of it like that. If you constantly have to scream at the world how good you are and how you're better than all these other people, you're probably just not that good. That's it. You're probably just not that good. And so instead of wasting your time screaming all that stuff, spend that time reading, learning, practicing, growing, whatever it is you need to do to become the person that you so desperately aspire to be, to chase the things that you're so jealous that other people have. And again, I'm speaking passionately because I'm really just speaking to my past self. And I'm so glad that, again, these are my favorite mistakes. I'm so glad that I can say that now because I made those mistakes and I learned. At one point, I just looked at myself and I'm like, why are you talking shit on this person to this other person who really doesn't care? Why can't you just be talking about this great thing that you've done or this great thing that they've done or what you've learned this week or what you've gained from watching this person who you're talking shit on? Like, I really had to kick myself up the ass and be like, this isn't actually who I am. This is a foul representation of some deep insecurity that I have that I need to work on. That's how you need to look at it. I'm so grateful that I made those mistakes because now I can be who I am today and really find the positive, the opportunity, and basically any situation and anything that I'm looking at, because that's what you have to do if you're going to continue to progress. You have to clear the shit that's keeping you glued to the current position that you're in so you can take that step forward. The last thing I had on that point of having too much ego is that unbridled competitiveness can be toxic. I made a point of writing that down. And I wanted to say this because I think people think, because I'm such a chill person and because I don't come across as like ruthless businessman or, wildly competitive, I think people think that I don't have those qualities in me. And I'm a firm believer that anyone who's doing something big or trying to do something big probably has that in them. So like I look at my calm and collected lifters and they can talk about how, I'm just doing these competitions. I just want to be a better version of myself. I know what goes on in the head of these like driven, successful people. They are hungry. They want it bad. And I can tell you, I am like savagely competitive, and I'm absolutely savagely competitive in this whole powerlifting gym business space. I'm friendly to my peers, absolutely, but I want to win. I want to be out ahead. I want to outgrow anyone who's trying to do what ZeroW does. I want people to follow ZeroW. Like, I want people to copy what we're doing, to try and replicate, to try and grow, because I think it's great for powerlifting, but it's a game to me, right? Like, I want people to play the game so I can win the game. I'm like grossly competitive. I'm hungry to beat people at this game. Like, that's just the truth. And I have no shame in admitting that, because it's not toxic. And the mistake that I have made in the past is thinking that I have to prove something, and thinking that I have to win to the point where my ego was actually holding me back, where I thought I was really good at what I was doing, when I thought I was doing an amazing job. I've always had a very negatively geared self-dialogue. Like, that's just who I am. Every morning I wake up and tell myself I'm a piece of shit. Like, that's just the nature of who I am. But I've had times in my coaching career where I've thought to myself, I'm a great coach. And they're very small windows of time where that confidence in my ability and that desire to grow and be good at what I'm doing was bordering on the edge of arrogant. I don't think I've ever truly been an arrogant person. In fact, it's my least or my most hated personality, attribute, characteristic in life. I really cannot stand arrogance. I really, really, really value humility. And I think anyone who knows me would probably describe me as grossly humble. I probably don't talk about myself enough. I find this, even talking about who I am, as bordering arrogance, even though I know it's not. I'm just talking, but it feels arrogant to me. So I hate arrogance, right? But there have been times where I've been overconfident in my own ability in my head, to the point where I've had to check myself and be like, you're not good enough. And being great and having a successful business or a successful gym or being a successful coach is nice, but that's not good enough for you. You can be better. There are things that you can do to push further. You are not perfect. Your business is not perfect. Your coaching is not perfect. Nothing is perfect. And until you can say that it is, you better shut the fuck up and keep working. And spoiler alert, it's never going to be perfect. So you better shut the fuck up and keep working. So I'm so glad that I've been able to catch myself before I've projected it out into the world, when I've been feeling like I know stuff. And I thank my younger self for having the maturity to do that in the moment, because I know young Thomas very well. And young Thomas, if he latched onto that and rolled with it, would have been a very, very different human being at 35 than he was when he was 25. So I'm so grateful I made that mistake, caught myself in it, and corrected the course. All right. Well, I feel like I've gone long enough. Those are 3 of my favorite mistakes. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know what you want to hear me talk about. I love doing these episodes, and I'll catch you soon.